Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be doing the Christmas tree book tag because it wouldn't feel like Vlogmas if there wasn't at least one holiday themed tag. So this tag was created by Emily from Simply Emily, and I will leave a link to her original down in the description box. I will also list all of the questions out in case you guys would like to do this for yourselves. There were a lot of books that I read growing up, and I actually have a whole video on that, so I will link that up here in the cards. But a few standouts would be the Chronicles of Narnia, the Little House on the Prairie series, and of course Harry Potter. I feel like everybody grows up reading Harry Potter. I think a lot of people might pick a new release for this question, but for me, what immediately came to mind as a breath of fresh air this year was Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. Over the past couple of years since graduating from college, I just hadn't been reading that many classics, and then the classics I was picking up, I was kind of struggling my way through. But Wives and Daughters was such a joy to read because it was so very easy to fall into and just fall completely in love with. Gaskell just creates the most vibrant characters I have ever read, and you really fall in love with every single one of them. Even the ones that annoy you, you just kind of fall in love with, and I personally found myself so very invested in all of their lives that, yeah, I think this was a real joy and a real find for me this year. I have to admit, when I first read this question, I was a little stumped because generally speaking, I don't tend to read very lighthearted or funny books, which makes my reading sound really depressing, but I promise you it's not. But then I remembered the obvious choice for this answer would be Trevor Noah's Born a Crime: Stories from a South African Childhood. This was one of the first books I read this year, and it's one of the books I have thought about the most this year. I've constantly found myself going back to anecdotes that he shared, and I've actually re-listened to certain sections in the audiobook, and I just really enjoyed it. Yes, there is some social commentary. Yes, there are sad moments because Trevor's life wasn't always, you know, glitz and glam and easy, but he has such an amazing storytelling ability. He has this really great comedic timing in his writing, and I mean, I made the mistake of listening to this in public and was snorting and laughing all over the place. For this question, I wanted to give a little moment of appreciation to Tom Bombadil from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. And that's mainly because he's actually one of my favorite characters in that whole first book. I think one of the things I really like about Tom Bombadil is that although he does wield a lot of power in his realm, he's not like, that power doesn't make him overbearing or dark or unapproachable. Rather, he's really warm and welcoming and just so very jolly, and I really love his section of the book, and I wish they had done it in the movie because I would have loved to see Peter Jackson's interpretation of that. And as for adding flair, I really like that he kind of makes it more I hate to say pagan, but I think the thing about Lord of the Rings as a whole, if you look over the big story of Lord of the Rings, is it feels very much like there are two huge powers, you know, that are clashing with each other, good and evil. But Tom Bombadil, for me, feels kind of like a relic of an older Middle Earth where maybe there were more like spirits and small gods, like demigod type figures, and Tom very much feels like that to me. So I don't know if that made any sense, but shout out to Tom Bombadil. It seems like whenever I hit a question like this in a tag video, I immediately think of Jane Austen characters. I don't know what that says about me, but I always choose Jane Austen characters for this. I think most Jane Austen fans can say that we've all dreamed of befriending Lizzie Bennet. I feel like she and I would get along very well because we both have this sense of what is proper and what you can and cannot do in public, and yet we also are like secretly very sassy, or in her case not so secretly very sassy. So I would love to befriend her, and I think we would actually mesh very well. The other Jane Austen heroine I always think of for this question is Anne Elliot from Persuasion. Now, I think what I really connect with in Anne is her solitary nature and how she, you know, she has this love for other people and she loves being around other people, but at the same time she's very self-contained, and I don't know, I feel like we're kind of soul sisters in that way. I know this question just asks for one book, but I actually have to throw two in there because I'm a rule breaker like that. The first book I wanted to mention was Days Without End by Sebastian Barry. This is of course the tale of two young men growing up during the American Indian and Civil Wars, falling in love and adopting a Native American daughter, and something about it just pulled at my heartstrings. I really loved their relationship. I really loved the writing style, and honestly, I mean, I feel like this whole video is just spoilers for my favorite books of the year, but honestly, this is one of the other books that I've kept thinking about ever since I read it. And the other book that I immediately thought of for this question was The Buddha in the Attic by Julie Otsuka, and I'm sure you guys are totally sick of hearing me talk about this. This is a story of immigration, it's a story of culture clash, it's a story of othering and war and racial tension, and if you haven't read this yet, pick it up. At first I was having a really hard time answering this question, and then I thought of the author Mohsin Hamid, who has been getting a ton of hype this year for his book Exit West. Now Exit West, from what I understand, I have not finished it yet, so no spoilers, but from what I understand, it is a story that very much looks at the current refugee crisis, at what war does to people's homelands and to people's identities, and it's just getting a ton of praise. But the book of his that I completed this year was The Reluctant Fundamentalist, and I wanted to mention this as overlooked for people who maybe really liked Exit West and wanted to check out the rest of his work, because I think this deals with very similar themes. This is narrated by a young Pakistani man who grew up in Pakistan, went to college in the United States, worked briefly in New York City, and then ended up returning to Pakistan post 9/11, and his kind of struggles to identify with the American dream and yet hold on to his Pakistani heritage at the same time. This one really blew me away, and if you're into more dynamic narrative styles, this is told as kind of a monologue, I would say. At the moment, the one book I would really like to see under my Christmas tree is Baron and Luthien by J.R.R. Tolkien, because I took it out of the library about a month ago, started it, got about a chapter or two in, and then had to return the book to the library before I could finish it. So at this moment, I'm kind of in suspended suspense? I'm kind of in extended suspense, there we go. And I would just really like to have my own copy so I can take my time and luxuriate in the amazingness that is Middle-earth. So those are my answers to the Christmas tree tag, and I will tag a few people in the description box because, per usual, I did not think this through before I sat down to film. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the tag. Thank you, Emily, for creating this tag, and I hope I will see you guys all tomorrow. Bye!